That is the day I first rolled this 2001 YZ125 into this garage with two goals in mind. One, build the absolute best 125 two-stroke I could for under $3,000. And two, do that all myself within my 750 square foot garage. So guys, sit back, get comfy. You are about to see the full transformation over 8 months of my 2001 YZ125. So like any good build, my goal for day one was to get the bike completely tore down to the frame. I like to do this just because I can look over the frame and the engine really well and see if there's anything I couldn't see with the bike all put together. Now I actually got this bike on trade with another bike I had. It was a CRF, so I'm not 100% sure on what the value of this bike would have been if I were to buy it outright, but I would guess around $800 to $900 because the top end was blown when I got it and it had a list of other issues. This bike has definitely been beat throughout the years, and tearing it down definitely sheds some light on some of the neglect this bike has had. Now, if any of you guys are interested in seeing the full videos of the teardown, the engine build, anything like that, I will have a playlist with every video linked down below. So you could watch that playlist if you want to see any of these full videos. Right now, it's a whole movie, so everything's kind of cut down a little bit, but this is a start to finish build of the YZ. When I pulled this chain off, I was surprised to find that the chain was so old and worn that with the chain sideways, you can almost do a full circle with it.
Oh man, if you guys work on bikes, especially older ones, you already know how much of a pain these.
So I spent about 3 hours trying to get that linkage bolt out because after looking them up online, I found out they were extremely expensive. I could not get this one out. I don't know if it's ever been out in its life, so I had to resort to cutting it and ordering a new one. With the bike all torn down, it was time to focus on disassembling the engine. I wanted to get this thing open as fast as possible to see what kind of parts I needed to order. Making sure I didn't need to get a cylinder replated or any cylinder work done. I wanted to get this open and see what was going on inside. So our cylinder ended up looking pretty good with some minor scuffs, nothing you can catch a fingernail on, so that cylinder was good to go. Now focusing our attention on the piston, you can notice that the exhaust side of the piston, it looks like the front of it was scored really bad and or melted a little bit, where the ring was actually stuck into the seat there. So that was our issue with no compression. So it looked like I was getting out of this pretty easy, no cylinder work, just a piston and rings.
Good, sweet. Looks like our transmission is A-okay. Okay, let's check out this cylinder. Well, good thing is I don't see any big scratches or gouges.
So with the engine teardown complete, I went ahead and ordered all the parts I need. I ended up putting about $600 into the engine between gaskets, seals, bearings, pistons, some reeds and stuff like that. Now my focus was to getting the engine cases beautified. So I was on to sandblasting and powder coating all these engine cases.
So this case is ready to go in the sandblaster, and I think it's time to show you guys my custom, obviously homemade sandblast cabinet. Now, this isn't perfect by any means, but it works and it does the job. It's a little leaky, so I definitely recommend using a good respirator when using it. Here it is. We got a couple of sandblast gloves that are duct taped into this big old Tupperware tote thing here. The sandblaster I'm using is this one here, and I'll show you in a second. It's down here. It's the one from Harbor Freight. It's the 50-pound blaster, and I'm running aluminum oxide in there right now. And believe it or not, what I did is I took this, I cut the lid out, put a piece of plexiglass in there, taped up the gloves into there. I run the, I got a little gasket here that's not working, and then I got a little filter here for the pressure to release. It's definitely leaky, but you know what? The sandblast cabinet wasn't quite in the budget yet, so I had to do what I had to do, and it works. And we're gonna show you guys that right now. So we got the cases all prepped, all cleaned up, degreased real well. Now we're gonna do procedure what they call outgassing, and basically you'll put these parts in an oven about 400 degrees, and what that does is that heats up the metal, and that lets all the exposed oils and contaminants that are in the metal still escape. Even though we degreased it, I'll show you guys an example here. You can see when we heat it up, see that right there? That's the oil coming out of the case. There's a lot of it. So you want to put this in an oven half an hour at 400 degrees, and that will get all that trapped oil out of the engine cases.
So with the engine cases all prepped, powder coated, and ready to go, it was time to start assembling this engine. So if you guys remember, I was talking about that crankshaft in the last video, and I got it in my vise here. And I'm taking a closer look at it, and you can see right there, it looks like a piece of the actual threads broke out, and it's matching about the same size chunk as this right here. So that's definitely what broke off on the crank. The part heat welded to it right there is actually part of the crankshaft. So we're going to go ahead and try to knock that little burr off, clean up this, and try to see what happens, see if we can save this.
I don't know how stuck this is on there, so I'm going to try to take a little putty knife and just kind of lightly tap this. Oh, wow. Okay, that was a good idea. And that is completely smooth. That's all the way off. Nice. Now I'm going to try to clean up these threads a little bit right here so nothing else breaks off and we run into the same issue again. Right now I'm just using some 600 grit sandpaper, and I'm kind of shaving down these tough edges. I don't want to go too much because I don't want to throw the crank out of balance. And I hope this little chunk being off isn't going to affect the balance of the crank too much. But I've got that smooth enough where I'm not worried about anything breaking off and eating into the case. It's time to drop the crankshaft in. We've got a smooth operation. A little bit of blue Loctite, torque this to spec. Oh, geez. I always put too much on it. Cylinder on.
So with the engine build complete, it was time to move on to powder coating the frame. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I wanted to do everything on this build myself in my home garage. And this was hands down the most difficult part of this entire build, and you guys will see that now. So to start the powder coating process, my goal was to sand and rough up the frame first because I was planning on using aircraft paint remover. This supposedly takes off powder coat. All you got to do is rub the frame and let it sit for a couple hours. Now, this did not work for me. I let it sit, so I ended up resorting to sandblasting. And my sandblasting setup was not very good. I had to sandblast outside when it was about -10. So I went back in the shop and I started building my own little sandblast box. Now this wasn't very good either. It was just made out of 1/4-inch drywall and it wasn't the best solution. I ended up taping it together, but it did work for getting the frame all sandblasted. The frame came out pretty good. And now it was time to build the oven. Now, I learned this trick from Garage 93 Red Bull Motorsports, where you can get insulation board and build a box and put a heat gun in there.
All right, so here's the completed product. This will just sit over the frame, which is gonna be sitting over here. We're gonna go ahead and set this on, put our heat gun in there. It should act like an oven. I got all the seams taped up, so this is pretty much it. You can see, very simple, it's just taped together. This is what Garage 93 did on Red Bull Motorsports, so I'm gonna try to see if I can do what they did. Hopefully it works.
And here I am powder coating the frame. This went pretty well, except my gun wasn't set up very well and it kept shooting a bunch of extra powder. This video was just super chaotic. It was all over the place, and powder coating this frame was definitely the most frustrating. This box only ended up getting to about 293 degrees, and the powder I have, you need to let it cure for about an hour at 400 degrees.
I've lost my mind completely now.
And to top it all off, what I ended up doing was cutting that foam oven apart and taping it to my actual oven. And this did get the temperature high enough. It just looks really sketchy, but it did work. And in the end, you can see the frame came out pretty good. It's not great, but for doing it at home with barely any tools to do it, I was pretty pleased with it. It ended up being very strong. After the first ride, it held up very well, and I think it looks pretty good. So with the frame and subframe all powder coated, ready to go, and the engine in that frame, it was time to move on to the suspension. Now I opted to Cerakote the front fork tubes and the rear shock body, and then I went for powder coat on the rear shock spring. And I also fully rebuilt both front and rear suspension to give the bike a good as new feel on the suspension. So I really enjoyed spraying the Cerakote on this build, but one thing I learned is that your prep work is absolutely key. So you have to sandblast really well, make sure you acetone bath, and make sure the surface is super clean. If you do all that, the Cerakote will come out really nice, thin, and strong. So it's really good for occasions like this with the front fork tubes where the clearances are really important. You can go ahead and Cerakote these fork tubes and it won't be a problem.
Pump our shock arm up. Oh! Come on, man! Okay. Did that get on the camera? No. It got on me, that's for sure. Oh God, it got me.
It got me literally right in the face, man. I'm over it. And let it come back up. Nice and smooth. No air in the system. Put on here. Okay, I don't know where...
So with the suspension built, I decided to change my focus onto building the wheels. I wanted to get the wheels on the chassis with the suspension mounted and the swing arm mounted so I could have this bike be able to roll around the shop if I need to move it. What I wanted to do for these wheels is pull down the factory rims because they were still in good shape and I wanted to get the rims coated. I ended up opting for a high durability spray paint, which is one thing on this build I'm not huge on, but I did want to see the reliability and durability of spray paint. I also wanted to go ahead and powder coat the hubs in that same burnt bronze color and go ahead and give these wheels all new spokes and just rebuild the stock OEM wheels since they were already in such good shape. So my method for truing up the wheels is a little bit out of the box. What do I recommend? I recommend just buying a truing stand. But if you're on a serious budget, you can do this and it does work. But once again, I recommend just buying a truing stand. What I do is I put the wheel in the bike, whether that be front or rear wheel, that in this case is the front wheel, and I lay a jack stand with a punch on it, and then I spin the wheel and then kind of gauge that distance between the punch and the rim, and then I can true up from there and make my adjustments. And you can see here how I gauge for wheel hop, so that's the up and down versus the side to side. What I do there is just stack a couple blocks of wood, lay something small enough, and then do the same thing, gauge the distance from the object to the wheel. So with the bare bones chassis put together, it was time to start prepping this bike for its first start. I couldn't wait. I was eager. I was excited. And I made one mistake that I will never do again. And this first start was horrifying. I will never make this mistake again. And I looked right past it, but stay tuned for the first start in this thing. It was an absolute adventure.
Is on. Not gonna lie to you guys, I just struggled for about 2.5 hours
trying to get that pipe on. When I heated it up, it kind of twisted and bent a little bit, and it was already bent as it was from hitting whatever it hit. So we do get the exhaust on. Got the clutch wired up with our kill switch. This is kind of a fancy billet one. And then we're actually waiting for a part on the throttle, but we're getting super close. All right, I just hooked up the throttle temporarily. What I'm missing is that little insert, nylon or little metal insert that goes in between the bolt and the actual wheel that the throttle cable spins on. But I do have throttle right now. I'm sorry, I just cannot wait to hear this thing run. So that's temporary. I'm gonna have to take that apart and I gotta keep going. I gotta hear this thing start up. All right, guys, a little nervous, not gonna lie. Guess the amount of kicks this is gonna take. Let's find that out. We're gonna go for it. We've got a little fuel leak out of the carb. That's no big deal. I'm guessing 3 kicks. Almost was 1. This is no choke. So the throttle's stuck wide open. I got blasted by the spark plug, and I probably just woke up all the neighbors.
So yeah, that was my lovely first start experience. What the issue was actually I had a Motion Pro cable, and the cable itself was too short. It was for a 2001 YZ125, so I'm not 100% what was going on there, but it was holding the throttle open about 1/3 when I did the first start. So I ordered up a new cable, and that fixed the problem. The kill switch I had was a Tusk kill switch, and that did not work out of the box, so I pretty much had everything working against me. What I should have done is had the brakes hooked up so I can actually stop the machine, but I didn't have anything there, so I had to sacrifice my hand and pull the spark plug, and I got whacked. But lesson learned. With the first track day right around the corner, I knew it was time to move my focus onto the brakes. So what I was going to do for the brakes is a full rebuild, front and rear master cylinders, front and rear calipers, new pads, everything new on the brakes. I also wanted to pull them down so I could sandblast and powder coat and Cerakote various brake components so they could be looking very, very trick. So this is the point of the build where it feels like all the hard work is finally paying off. And that feeling gets even stronger as soon as I put the plastics and graphics on. Right now, it almost feels unreal because I know it's super close to being done and that track ride is right around the corner. After 8 months of hard work, it was finally time to take this bike to the track for the very first time and test how it does in the dirt. I was super excited to get to the track, and let me tell you, it was an absolute blast being able to finally move this bike.
I knew I was going to do that. That corner's just out to get me.
And that is going to complete the full build of my 2001 YZ125. I want to take a special moment and thank all the sponsors of this build for helping me out throughout the process. Without you guys, I could not have done it. That was a massive help. And thank you to everyone who has watched from day one, or if you jumped in between, for liking, commenting, and supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate that. Now, if you guys are curious on how much this bike cost me to build, the total bill ended up being right around $2,600 for everything, all parts included, not including the price of the bike. So $2,600. Let me know down below what you guys think of the bike and how it came out. Thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for the next build.